We'll welcome in our resident sports betting analyst, Erica, for the best bets of the weekend. It's easy money with E. And Erica, we're headed to the tricky triangle, but hopefully it's not that tricky because we were thrown for a loop in Chicago. Man.
Chicago did this year exactly what it did last year. Even though I predicted that it would be a lot different, it was the same race as far as unpredictability and craziness. I'm gonna say this. Here's my thing. I want every sports book to start offering us a market for yes rain delay because the past few weeks rain delays, overtimes. I'm just like, yes, give us a rain delay option, please, sports books. Are you
Yeah.
listening to me?
Yeah, that would be a very safe bet to bet on rain on a NASCAR weekend. All right, let's dive right in to the Pocono bets, and we'll start with winning manufacturer.
Okay, so for my winning manufacturer, I'm going to go Toyota minus 105 to be the winning manufacturer. And that's basically, Kim, because JGR has really ruled at this track. They've won 6 of the past 9 races at Pocono. But even more specifically, JGR swept the podium last year with Hamlin, Reddick, and MTJ finishing first, second, and third. Now, going back to my comment about unpredictability, if you want to throw a little bit of money on, let's say, Chevy or let's say Ford, because they have the longest odds at plus 440, absolutely do it. We never know what we're going to get with a NASCAR Cup Series race, so I would not be mad if you did that. But for the best value when it comes to Toyota, if you don't want to do the minus 105, you can definitely do JGR specifically to be the winning team at plus 130 if you want better value.
All right, we've talked winning manufacturer. You even mentioned teams, but let's talk drivers. What are the E's top picks for the weekend?
E's top picks for the weekend are Seabell as a top 3 finisher. We're going to go Byron as a top 5 finisher. We're going to go Bubba Wallace as a top 10 finisher. Let's just go back to Seabell first as my top 3 finisher. Christopher Bell and the 20 team have quickly become one of my favorite teams to root for as a fan. And then honestly, as a bettor, one of my favorite teams to back. Now, Christopher Bell's odds are not always on the longest side because, he's a rock star. But there's, typically a place where you can find some good value in Seabell, even if you have to dig for it. And if it's not, if it's on the shorter side, sometimes you've got to see one go through the hoop, and Seabell can typically give you that. So he's my top 3 finisher, plus 220. That's a very reasonable wager. Moving on to Byron as a top 5 finisher at plus 120. He led 60 laps here last year at Pocono. No, he does not have a win here in the Cup Series, but he does have a Truck Series win. I don't think Byron finishing in the top 5 is too crazy of a thing to happen. So plus 120, Byron top 5 finisher. And then Bubba Wallace as a top 10 finisher at plus 160. He's got 6 top 10 finishes on the season. And we've had this conversation before, Kim. We've talked about how basically Bubba's in a bind. He basically needs a win to get in if he wants to have back to back playoff appearances. And it's now or never for him. Pressure's on Bubba. So I'm going to back him at plus 160 to be a top 10 finisher. I also think that is something that we could see this weekend.
Okay, some really good choices there. Now let's look at the head-to-head bet for the weekend. Who's up against who?
For my head to head, I got the head to head between Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. I'm going to back Ross Chastain to win the head to head over Kyle Busch. And that is despite the fact that Kyle Busch runs really well at this track. And I know I've been on this fade Busch campaign, as many of you on Twitter have been as well, and rightfully so. But he bit us in the butt last week by finishing in the top 10. But a broken clock is right twice a day. So we're going to fade him again this week. Chastain's just having a better season this year. I said last week, Bush is having the season from hell, and that is still true. I don't care what he did last week. And last year at Pocono, Chastain finished 13th and Bush finished 21st. So backing him to have a better finish in that head-to-head.
All right, Erica, you're fading KB, but it seems like you also might be fading one of your favorites, Denny Hamlin. Yes, you mentioned Toyota as winning manufacturer, but Denny was nowhere on your best bets of the weekend. So what's the story there?
Kim, you know me very well. And everyone out there listening should know too that I have Denny Hamlin as like one of my evergreen bets. Even when I don't talk about him on Around the Track, I'm probably going to back him. But the reason I didn't mention him this week, Kim, is because I felt very burned by our favorite last week, Shane, in the Cup Series, wrecking out before the end of the race. So for those purposes and those reasons only, I'm going to take a step back from the favorite this week, who is Denny at plus 450, who's won 7 times at Pocono. Completely reasonable to throw some money on him as an outright winner, but I personally am going to take a step back from him as a good bet for this week.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all the info. Don't forget to check in on her social media channels for the bonus bets of the weekend. We'll see Erica next week to preview the next gen car for the first time on the big track at Indy. They're back to the oval.